Oh, yeah, that's true. Sorry.
So it gives me a lot of pleasure this evening to introduce Judy Lief, who not only has been practicing and studying the Dharma for more than half a century, but was also one of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's earliest and closest students. And Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche entrusted Judy with so many key executive positions that it's hard to list them all, but uh, let's say that she was executive director of Vajradhatu Publications. She was dean of Naropa University. She was head of practice and study at many of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's 3-month seminaries. She's edited many of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's books, including the ones we're using in our course. So she is literally familiar with every phrase and sentence in the texts we're studying. So actually, it's most fitting that Judy herself is with us for the last two Śrāvakayāna classes, which are on the path of liberation, as we finish reading the book that she herself edited, The Truth of Suffering and the Path of Liberation. Judy is also author of the book, Making Friends with Death, A Buddhist Guide to Encountering Mortality, and she's the head teacher of the annual Profound Treasury Retreats, which I can testify from personal experience as a fabulous immersion in Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings and in his world. Judy teaches worldwide, and her podcast, Dharma Glimpses has subscribers in more than 10 countries. So there's a lot more information on Judy Lief at her website, which is judylief.com. But I'm very honored and deeply grateful and delighted to welcome Judy Lief to our course. Over to you, Judy.
Well, thank you, Tashi, and I'm honored to be part of this course. And I look forward to seeing some of your group, your Datun group, uh, the dedicated meditative core. And uh, I look forward to hearing what you have to say in our discussion later. I believe we're starting with some sitting for about, 10 minutes or something. And I think Caroline will be leading that. Yeah. Well, welcome. I need to just make a brief apology to begin with that I have a pretty bad cold. I may have to stop and blow my nose or something from time to time. So bear with me. The topic is the 5 paths that we'll be exploring today. And I understand it's part of the whole series on the fundamental, basic ground teachings of the Buddha, the 4 noble truths, the truth of suffering, the question of suffering, you could say. Why? What is it about, and why do we suffer so much, no matter what our circumstances? And is it possible to change that in any way, or are we just stuck? And that's where the path, the 4th noble truth, is so important. Trungpa Rinpoche used to use the term quite a lot, workability. The 4th noble truth is that we can actually work with our situation and that it's not hopeless. At the same time, realistically, there's a lot of struggle, a lot of pain, loneliness, and various other forms of suffering throughout life. So in reflecting on this, I think it's good to start with, to really, as I'm talking and as we're exploring this topic, to reflect personally on your own journey, path, how the whole notion of path is so important. The sense that there's a progression, that practice is not static. It's continually changing and developing. And that we build on previous experiences. Every time we sit down to practice, we're building on experiences we have had in previous times. So there's a whole sense particularly in Vajrayana, a sense of progressive stages that we actually can benefit by having the view that things are growing and changing and developing and flourishing in various ways, both in terms of more insights, but also with each new insight, there seem to be more problems as well. The more we develop, the more we see how we've fallen short, the more we accomplish, the more we see our obstacles. So all of those are signs of a progressive path, continually developing. I was interested in introducing this topic in this particular chapter. Of course, Trungpa Rinpoche talks about path in many ways in the various writings that he's made. The importance of continually having a sense that as you go about your life, as we wake up in the morning, as we go about our day, having a sense that some kind of placing it in terms of viewing our lives as a whole, as a path of discovery, a path of awakening, a path of cultivating compassion, a path of awareness. All of that, seeing things in that perspective as not just random things we have to get through each day, is part of having an attitude of being a student, having every experience that we encounter being teaching that we could take to further ourselves in our own self-discovery and discovery of the nature of reality or the path. In this chapter, chapter 60 in the first volume of Found Treasury, Rinpoche makes a big distinction between 2 kinds of path, 2 approaches to path, and you could say 2 approaches to Dharma altogether. And I think that's important to look at, what do we think we're doing? Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to accomplish? And I said, we talked about a study called the common path, which is, I think, really, really something we all touch into and is very common in the world, is that trying to accumulate some kind of special experience, try to change ourselves in some way to be more peaceful, more calm, even tempered, more kind and thoughtful, and all of those kind of self-improvement ideas. Sorry. Be peaceful, high, having some experience, peak experience. And Rinpoche discouraged that approach as kind of just attachment to some kind of pleasure or God realm type experience, a sense of trying to be special, even though it's called common path. It's actually trying to be special path, try to be particularly good student, try to be particularly spiritual, whatever that means to us. And he said that's not really what the path is in terms of the Four Noble Truths. It's not having a special experience, but directly relating to experience as it is. What he called it, coming directly to the mind, looking directly at experience without trying to alter or change it or improve it or make it more fun and interesting, but just step by step, experience by experience, including it, relating with it. And so that means our immediate experience, whatever that may be, is fruitful for progressing along the path. And it's not fruitful to kind of look beyond or to some other imagined better way and try to force ourselves to get there. Then we'll make more progress by being where we actually are and relating directly to it without hesitation or without covering up or rearranging anything. And how does that start? What is important at the beginning? Because we're talking at the beginning here. And that's where he talks about what's called renunciation. Renunciation sounds very monastic and kind of, you might think of early martyrs, flagellating themselves or something like that, beating themselves up. But here it's actually somewhat, I guess you'd say, positive in a certain way. It's kind of like cleaning a house or something. It talks about it as a kind of a rising of inspiration, what inspires you to actually do the work or to engage in what is involved in being on a path like this. So he talks about this term really important, nejung, which he translated as genuine becoming. Or you could say becoming genuine. It could be genuine becoming genuine. And that's that sense of something. You have to reach a point. He says you have to keep touching to this point. And we can see it within ourselves, that such a strong urge to just continue samsaric approach in our world and in our life. And trying again and again, what we're told was to make us happy, make us grow. So many of those just bring us further into confusion and chaos. Does what actually don't make us happy at all. So a sense of, it says, disgust or determination not to just continue the patterns we know are harmful to ourselves, to actually have that point where we recognize, I can't do this anymore. There's got to be another approach. The determination to be free of those habits, thought patterns, emotions, relationships that just further the sense of being running around in circles of pain or just some sort of world. He talks about it in many ways, but the sense of in order to really engage and continue and not lose heart, we have to touch back in again and again to why do this all together? What have we seen that we realize is just entrapping us, and how can we let go of that? A heartfelt wish, a resolve to emerge from those kind of harmful patterns, and not being seduced by just whatever the next little chocolate chip in the cookie might be. Every little endorphin hit, every little teeny tiny excitement, and just chasing one after another, after another, after another. So there's a sense of harshness, I suppose you could say, if we don't have a strong desire to change, we're not going to change. If we don't have a strong resolve, we're working with the default patterns there by which we can collectively have created this world that is so confused and so harmful to ourselves and so many others. So genuine becoming genuine, becoming straightforward and less needy of being fed, less caught in attachments and mental traps. And he, in an interesting way, he talks about renunciation in many places, in many ways. But here he connects this idea of nejung with what he called contentment or chokse, which is you could say the positive side of this. One is like letting go of these attachments and harmful patterns. The other is some kind of contentment that comes from that. The sense of what we have is enough. What we have to work with is enough. So there's a sense of worthiness and a sense of touching into some kind of freshness and goodness as well. So he links the two of them in a way. I think if you have had experiences, which all of us have had, of finding ourselves so stuck that we're just desperate to get out, and having a moment when we've actually dropped all that, there's a sense of tremendous freshness, a sense of that is enough. I don't actually need what I thought I needed. I don't actually need it. There's many things like that. Well, I thought I needed this. I need my life to be like this. I need my life to be like that. If I can make my life a certain way, then everything will be okay. And this is a real key, I think, to these two terms, how they work, because there's a sense that that kind of conditional approach, trying to find just that thing that can make us feel okay, is never going to totally satisfy. We have to keep remodeling all the time to find those places where we kind of feel okay, as opposed to contentment, which is whatever's going on, there's some kind of thread of contentment that we're not caught up. And we have the confidence that whatever arises is just another interesting experience that we can work with, we can learn from, we can develop and grow from. Whether it's happy experiences or not so happy experiences, good or bad, there's a sense of path continuity that way. So the point of starting, exploring this with that contrast is, I think it's important to see in ourselves how we waver between those, how it's so easy to fall back and thinking that if we only had this circumstance or that circumstance, our practice should be this way or that way. And if it isn't, we feel we're not doing well. And if it does fit some idea, then we think we're doing better, as opposed to, it doesn't matter. You're just doing it is what matters. Doing it is what matters. Trusting that the practice itself, the path itself, doesn't need our addition of our pleasure pain attachments. And then on that basis, what is this path? In this case, Rinpoche's focus on what's called the 5 paths. I think it's important to place this in the context. There's so many descriptions of stages of the path in Tibetan Buddhism, particularly. There are the 3 yanas, which is like the 3 volumes of the book, are the 3 yanas, the foundation, of mindfulness awareness, the simplicity of the Hinayana, the compassionate practice of the Mahayana, and the full engagement practice of the Vajrayana. There are systems of 9 yanas, and so he touches on that in this book as well. The Śrāvakayāna is one of the 9 yanas, and then there are the 5 paths. So it can seem a little listy, to say the least. So many lists and ways of looking at what we're doing. Maybe sometimes might even feel a bit over the top that way. But the general idea is progress and progression and movement. And honestly, sometimes in practicing, it can feel like we're not getting anywhere. You're not moving you any which way. And it can be discouraging sometimes and hard to stay with it. Many people start practicing, but they don't stay with it very long because it's not that easy. Excuse me a second. So I have to be a true confession. This chapter, chapter 60, is not my favorite kind of chapter because it introduces so many lists with only briefly talking about what they are. And at the same time, it has a lot of cool, interesting stuff in it. Okay. So let's look at some of the things that come up. Dang it. Okay. Okay, why have these lists at all? It always comes up whenever I see a list. Why have another list? Buddhism is filled with like crazy amounts of lists. Partly, I think that sense of progressive unfolding is really helpful to have in mind. That a sense of there's a connection in the very first moment that you encounter the Dharma to the completion of the journey and final liberation. A sense that there's a thread in your life when you have this renunciation, when you make this commitment, decide this is actually something important and I'm going to do it. And I'm inspired to do it because I see how badly my other approach works. Then there's a sense of kind of support from that as we lose heart sometimes and re-engage in other times, and we go on various side tracks, etc. That there's a sense of a central theme. What is your life? You're very busy, accomplished, doing many things. Where is the central thread that holds that together? That is where your heart really can fully manifest. So it creates this sense of ongoing journey. And it shows kind of the development from the very beginning, just to taking the first time you read a book or heard a talk or just had a thought, to all the stages of practice. And it's helpful to, sometimes it's helpful to have landmarks along the journey. And it's helpful to know that just step by step, if we stick with it, it will naturally open. It's not that we have to push anything, we have to make anything happen. There's a natural opening that comes in pursuing these kind of paths of study and practice and living in a decent way. It's gradual, it's step by step. We don't have to do everything at once. And it's not a race. It's not a race to get somewhere fast. It's not something that can be forced. It's more of an unfolding than a project. It's like a ripening. It's not instant. But step by step, we gradually transform how we view things and how we go about things. And in looking at stages like this and this kind of approach, you can notice, or other people should notice, how you change. You change. bit by bit, in little ways that sometimes are not at all obvious, but they accumulate. And people do soften and ripen and deepen over time, sometimes surprisingly to ourselves or anyone else. There's a gradual transformation. So that's an important part of this. It's gradual. There's a transformation that is natural, but there's also a sense of the steadiness that whatever little glimpses we have, they need to be stabilized. Just little glimpses, are not enough. They're important. Every so often, moment of inspiration while you're sitting, right? And, and then it goes away. Or like in dreams, sometimes we have this, say something really profound. I had this profound dream. And you wake up and you don't remember exactly what it was, except it felt profound. So it needs stability by sticking with things, integrating what we study into our lives, working with it in the way that you go from just hearing the Dharma and studying the Dharma to really integrating it within all of the activities of our lives. So it's not random. There's a structure and there's a progression. And so that is some of the basics of the path. So I wanted to touch. In this talk, on a little bit on just the first of the two of the five paths of accumulation and the path of unification. And this, you say accumulation. Usually, you don't think of Buddhism as accumulating. You say we're not supposed to accumulate all this stuff, but in the path of accumulation is the very first path. And what are you accumulating? What are you accumulating as you progress on this path? Two things: merit and wisdom. The two accumulations. Merit is a tricky word. I mean, you might think of like indulgences in the early days of the Catholic Church or something. But merit here means just living a decent life, being a good person, helping and others, and not getting into, not causing harm. Really basic behavioral things, living a dharmic life, and there's a lot of teachings on that. So it's really basic. It's not esoteric. It's that from the get-go, the sense of having some kind of decency and moral approach in life is important on the path and the foundation. That wisdom is obviously insight into your own mind and into world around you. And how do you accumulate that? Primarily through meditation practice or shamatha. Familiarize with your mind. You all know a lot about this because you've all been Datun people. So you understand how important shamatha is. Familiarize with our mind, all of our mind. So it's different than studying neurology or conceptualizing what his mind is like. Again, it goes back to that common path and the correct path, which is direct observation of your own mental process. And staying with it, with whatever arises, being with whatever arises, and staying with that. So we're not trying to get somewhere, and not trying to avoid something. And whatever is arising is complete and adequate and fuel for awakening, no matter what it is. So the sense of nowness, of presence, of mind. Not waiting for the right moment or the special thing. Not being discouraged by what we see when we notice how our mind works. Maybe amused instead, but staying with it, step by step, illuminating for ourselves the broader scope of our mental possibilities, I guess you'd say. And all that we can realize that's not in words, not in concepts, just immediate. You could say, not being shocked by our own mind, not being discouraged by our own mind, dispassionate, direct observation, so ordinary, so basic. And it's so ungraspable and profound. That what's really going on cannot really be captured. And we can rest in that cannot be captured space with shamatha. And realize that capturing is reducing and controlling and limiting who we really are deep down. In introducing the 5 paths, I remember, of course, everyone wondered, well, where am I in the 5 paths? Where am I? Where am I? People had all sorts of wacko ideas where they were. And Rinpoche kept saying, well, you're all on the path of accumulation. You're all on the path of accumulation. That's what you're really working with. So keep working on it. In other parts of the book, he goes into much more detail on the path of accumulation and all the paths. So he goes, spends quite a bit of time talking about the 5 paths, each of them with all their subtleties, the lower, middle, and higher path of accumulation with each of them. But this is just a general sense of how do we start? It's actually encouraging that we can just keep it simple. We can work with our behavior and our lifestyle, and we work with our shamatha, our meditation practice, and we can join them together. We can begin to have a dharmic, set up a dharmic support system that includes our actions and our practices all as one unified thing, which leads to the second path, the path of unification. And this is one aspect of going through the paths, is each step becomes more intimate, more personal. First, more or less just trying to figure out what is the path altogether. What are some basic teachings that we're dealing with? And then working with them and bringing them together, unifying, joining our mind with the Dharma. May be one with the Dharma. May my mind be one with the Dharma, unifying in that sense. And in this second path of unification, it's said to be, kind of relaxing a little bit, more familiarity with what's going on, and a little bit of glimpse of where it's headed, in terms of the transition from the Hinayana to the Mahayana. So again, you see there's the intersections which can sometimes be confusing, the 5 paths and the 3 yanas. But there's this point where it kind of links together. So I think that's probably enough to get started, and we'll, in the next talk or discussion, exploration, talk about the other 3 paths, but also kind of how the whole system works yet again, and talk about how to how this teaching can benefit us, and how we can also find particular points in the teachings of each path that might be relevant to us. And so a final thing here, and I'll come back to that, is in the future, is that in these kind of lists, with the 5 paths, the 3 yanas, it can seem like a really fixed steps. But what Rinpoche has said, Trungpa Rinpoche and others, is that this is a way for us to think about things, but the path is a very living thing. So things don't necessarily, now I finish this path and now I go to the next path. But it's just like in practice. It's not like everything just goes straight in a line. What's Mahayana, what's Hinayana? There's a lot of overlap and individual experiences shifting from day to day. Excuse me. So I think that's enough to start thinking about. I think the starting point that's most helpful is to really, from time to time, reflect on your path, from where you've started and where you are. And over again, keep coming back to that, where you started, where you're headed. So reflecting. In fact, every day is kind of a path. You can reflect from the beginning to the end. What have happened? What's the dharma of my day? Each day is a kind of a fresh opportunity that way. So be curious. That's what I had to say for the day. Sorry, I'm so out of it.
Thank you, Judy. So now we will move to the breakout rooms. We have shared the questions with the facilitators. Just to remind you, the Chinese rooms are number 1, 2, and 3. The Spanish room is number 4. French room is number 5. Portuguese room is number 6, and all the other rooms are English. So, and then after we create the breakout rooms, if you want to go to your language, you can change to the room that you want. Judy, are you still here? I
Yes, I am.
Can we try you without the headphones, or maybe you can change the audio microphone to the like your computer speakers, because the sound is a bit muffled, and without headphones, their own headphones, people find it hard to follow. I got few messages.
Okay, let's try this. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, if you changed it, can you try to say something so I can see if the sound is better?
How's this? Is this better?
Now you turned on, you removed your headphones, right?
Yes.
I think it's a little bit better. Can you say a little bit something else?
Yes. I'm trying to make my sound better. Does it sound better?
Yeah, it does. It does. It definitely more loud and a little bit more clear. It's not that muffled. The
Okay.
AirPods, they don't have a very good mic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay.
I'll just leave it like this then. Yeah.
Okay, great.
If there's anybody here in the main room who needs help to go to a breakout room, you can just unmute yourselves and we can try and help.
They actually can't unmute themselves. Then you
But
can write on the chat or you
yeah.
help her. Beatrice, you need help, right? French? Is it French? Okay, I will put you in the French room. Hmm. Hi, Judy. So we will wait 1 or 2 minutes just for everybody to come back from the rooms, and then
Okay.
we'll start with the questions. So now we're gonna have a Q&A session. You can raise your hand if you have any questions, or you can write in the chat. So we have one question. Just a moment. Okay, Zé, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Hello, Judy. Thank you for
Hello, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Thank you for your teachings. I have a question regarding the path or this heritage that Trungpa Rinpoche offered to us, and we are reading these texts regarding mostly about this. Ground the Śrāvakayāna path and the Four Noble Truth in these lists. As you said, that this chapter is more more like a, I don't know, stuck or with these lists and labels, etc. But Trungpa Rinpoche was a master that disrupt all of these lists and all these numbers. Uh, he shows us the simplicity and the honesty of the life, and as the moral, the common sense of morality. Many people see him with this complexity and ambiguous, etc. But even though he gave us these many teachings about this ground and Four Noble Truth and renunciation, etc. How you can see this complexity between this ground that you have to have, you need to have this ground, and his example, his view of the world, the nature of the mind, etc. I don't know if I'm clear.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but I think what you're saying is that, tell me if I'm hearing it right, that in this emphasis on the foundation, uh, and altogether, he was very unique among a lot of teachers from in his emphasis on the Hinayana and all the importance of all the basic Buddhism as a ground for going into if you're going to Vajrayana or Mahayana student, he kept going back to the basics, like every year back to the early teachings and the four foundations and the Four Noble Truths and teachings on impermanence, egolessness, etc. All the foundations he felt were so important for people to have when they, no matter what direction they went in their studies. And it's also true that even though not only Trungpa Rinpoche has a very intense reputation in all sorts of ways. So some people it led them to believe that he didn't really care about how people behaved in life. They can just do anything you want, and that was definitely not the case. And people tried to imitate him sometimes in the more outrageous behavior without knowing what they were doing and got all sorts of trouble. So it was pretty wild in a lot of ways in the early days. On the other hand, he made very clear in his teachings over and over again that it's important to respect, the people's goodness and to lead a decent life. There's a wonderful chapter of how to be a dharmic person. It's very fundamental. You treat people well and you live, don't engage in bad conduct, and you are gracious and generous and all that kind of thing. Um, so it's a I suppose it's a holding of the question of sometimes hard to understand his behavior. At the same time, what he is teaching and what he actually emphasizes is very clear. So you just have to hold those two together. It's not that nothing is going to change um, the controversies around him, I don't think. But I also think that's okay because all of us have, these are aspirational in so many ways, what we're trying to work with. Just because we talk about a renunciation doesn't mean we're actually doing it. You talk about mindfulness, that we're actually being mindful. It's something that's uh, as much of a challenge as a description. Um, so I don't know if that is what you're getting at, but a lot of times people aren't aware of that because of the multitude of things he did. The things that are most kind of entertaining are to hear about. Well, he was pretty wild sometimes, and people actually then pretend that's what the story is, but it's not really. Um, so um, that's all I have on that. I mean, I hold the two things simultaneously in mind. Any questions you have, and then you get back to, and I would extend that to questions you have about his students and what we're like. But and that's the living quality of the whole thing.
Thank you very much.
Judy, we have a question in the chat from Jessica. She asks, once you start studying Dzogchen, is shamatha a waste of time?
Is shamatha all what?
Oh, wait, once you start studying Dzogchen, is shamatha a waste of time?
Okay. I think that shamatha is never a waste of time. It's the most beginning practice and it's the most advanced practice. In terms of Vajrayana, it's a sampanna krama, a formless practice. And if strictly following what I've taught by Trungpa, he said meditation, shamatha, and he always talked about shamatha vipassana as a combination, shamatha inseparable vipassana. Without that, there's no hope. He said it's absolutely essential all the way through.
Thank you, Judy. Ila or Isla, you can unmute yourself and open your video. Yes.
Hello,
Hello.
Judy. I feel so blessed that that you are here for us, and that you are so close to Trungpa, that you've been so close to him, and this is a blessing which comes through you for all of us, I think. So I just want to say thank you for this. And can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my question is, or what we've been talking about the path in our group, and is it that the path is just being in the moment and see what you get? I mean, doing the practice, doing shamatha vipassana, and then see what happens during dreams, during your daily activities, and all these kind of things, and work with it to find out what some disturbances might be blessings and all these kind of things. So is this how to understand the path?
I think that's partially the case. I think it's both. I think that you're touching into is what he emphasized here is that the path is a natural unfolding. It's not like a project to do. On the other hand, I think that uh, as we practice, what comes up gives us an idea of where we might need to do some work. And so listening to what is being said, you know, from ourselves to ourselves, I suppose you could say. So there is some intentionality, obviously, deciding where to place your energy, and having decision points like that. But in terms of the path more generally, I think so much happens just simply by trusting that you don't have to do anything. The practice
Unfolds itself.
unfolds itself. But that can get tricky because then it can be just a way we excuse ourselves from having effort in. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those other qualities that are helpful from some of the lists, I think, about, there's a lot of factors involved that we're cultivating. So some of the natural unfolding is recognizing what we need to cultivate more and what we need to let go of. And that's where, effort and other things come in. Yeah.
I understand. Thank you, Judy. Thank you.
Judy, we have a question also from the chat from Estela from Brazil. She asks, Dear Judy, could you please comment on how to hold a sense of movement and progression on the path without falling into the trap of self-improvement? How can we engage on the path accurately without slipping into the common path mindset of trying to improve ourselves? Thank you so much for the precious teachings.
I think the point of talking about these two approaches is to begin with just to recognize how our tendency is always to kind of look for some kind of pleasure and some kind of what do you call it, affirmation. And all there's been a lot of discussion about people getting advice from internet advisors, and how there's algorithms are geared towards providing continual hits of endorphin and continual what do you call it? Affirmation of who you are. Just feeding your ego and feeding your ego and feeding your ego, and there's that same kind of looking for affirmation, looking for a pat on the back, looking for certain experiences. Uh, I think the point is to begin to see those patterns, not to beat ourselves up. Well, oh God, now I'm just trying to, I have a tiny little meditation experience and I get all excited how I'm progressing, and then I have a really what we consider terrible sitting session, and I said, now I'm going backwards. Just begin to have such familiarity with those patterns that they begin to not have the same power over us. We say, okay, I see that. We'll just come back to the present. The present isn't going anywhere or in that way, but we don't trust it. It's not good enough, not enough. So that's why that other quality of it's enough, that contentment, that's so important. And we very seldom experience it. We kept thinking there's something more, there's something over there, there's some better thing, there's a more interesting teacher or another better book or this better person or better husband, wife, child, whatever it is. Yeah. So it's what we're working with.
Thank you, Judy. Could we take a few more questions, or what do you think?
Sure.
Yes.
No problem.
Uh,
No.
Sophie, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you, Judy. It's deeply touching to see that you are teaching us while feeling under the weather. First and foremost, wish you a very speedy recovery. I noticed that in the path of accumulation, we are encouraged to live a decent life, to be a good person, and to cultivate merit through ethical conduct. My question is, how can we discern whether our effort to be a good person is still part of the common path versus genuinely engaging in the path of directly relating to mind? In other words, how do we recognize in our own practice the difference between self-improvement as a form of avoidance and renunciation as a genuine turning towards reality? I have this question because I often struggle with this gray area in my daily life, and I would love to hear your insight on how to navigate it. Thank you.
Oh, good question. I think that the beginning point is you're far along in the beginning point in recognizing the way our minds tend to kind of always be turning in the direction of a common path, wanting somehow that we're going to become peaceful and calm and kind and et cetera, et cetera. Everything we think of as good, we're just going to magically become like that and kind of create that. It's kind of like a version of ourselves that is religious or good or all those qualities we wish we had more of, and trying to kind of force those qualities to arise. And I think by noticing that and just seeing that, that's part of who we are. It's often the main reason we get involved in the path is we want to improve in various ways, are very much part of it. That we recognize it's somehow something that might have brought us to a certain point, but over time needs to be dropped more and more. So you're seeing those moments. We can see those. We have choice moments, in practice and in life. Very, very powerful points. We can go this way or that way, and we notice more and more of those moments and learn from that. And it's not that we're going to always kind of get away from that, but it can be softened and have less of a pull towards us. We see. Can almost, I would say, have some kind of a sense of humor when we see how we're looking for approval, looking for affirmation, looking for this, looking for that, looking for that. Sorry. And it's tiresome and it's kind of funny and sad. And so we have to actually embrace it in a certain way in order to let it go a little bit more. One time, Khyentse Rinpoche said something to the order of one sign of progress on the path is that the experiences we have that are embarrassing and annoying become amusing instead.
Thank you, Judy. Julia, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Not feeling well and for all the work that you've done supporting the release of these writings, which I'm finding to be just extraordinary and really helpful. So I know it's been a lifelong thing for you. So thank you. Huge benefit. And my question, it's sort of what we're all talking about all the time. In seated practice, coming up with difficult aspects of myself, encountering aggression, and just like dysphoria self, and the very things that I, of course, would always, avoid in all sorts of
Yeah,
myriad
of course,
ways.
yeah.
So do you ever apply specific like antidotes? I mean, I found that when it comes up, I can do like Tonglen and like which is a way of breathing it in and then but it's another method. It's separating from just the shamatha and staying with the breath. So just wanting to ask if you have well, I'm sure you have a lot of experience, but what do you do when you're sitting and you negativity about one's own self and just pain, like klishta, like just pain is there. Do you have any specific advice?
Yeah. Well, that's a good example. It's a good question, especially the sense of anger and aggression and towards ourselves as well as towards others sometimes or towards things. Um, and the approach antidotes to that vary across the three yanas uh, in different approaches and many different ways of dealing with it. Um, and sometimes it's just too much. We just have to accept that's what we're feeling right now. But I think sometimes it's just a simple shift of like who's on first, I'll put it that way, perspective. Like seeing that pattern in yourself. Maybe the identity could be more with a seeing of that than actually dwelling in the anger itself. It's not it doesn't work to try to get rid of it, I don't think. But it does help to say, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I'm seeing something about myself.
Yeah.
I'm seeing pain. I'm feeling pain. And and that's in life, that's what we do. But how is it that I'm able to see that? Something in me really knows what's going on. And maybe that's more close to who I am really. So trusting in that, Warren. But also, I mean, just on a practical level, we have to be we're so unkind to ourselves sometimes. And so that we don't actually just feel bad, then we beat ourselves up for feeling bad. We feel angry and then beat ourselves up because that's not how I want to be. But that is how I am right now. And
Yeah.
so uh, it's I think a very slow process, but little bits of uh, kind of beginning to trust more that you can see through this. Pain doesn't go away. Some things just are going to hurt no matter what. But
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that with the skandhas, like just dipping a toe into that. So the sequence of like the object comes up, and then I have an emotional feeling about it, and then there's an idea about it, and then more of an idea, and then the whole story. So I'm doing that. I can do that in my own mind. So the object that I see is actually my own aggression. And then the whole, and it goes right to the ego identification with it, like you're saying. Like it gets stuck in the consciousness of like, wow, this is, you know, who I am and I'm stuck in it. Like I've blended with the experience rather than having, you know, insight, a little detachment and insight. It happens,
Yeah.
it can happen a lot on the cushion is the thing, because the cushion is really where there's no phone to look at or no no one to talk to, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever. Nothing's going on, you know?
There's no one to blame because there's no one there. No one's doing anything to you.
Right.
I think the other, just a really ordinary, simple level, I find one of the most helpful things in the sitting is just the slowing down of the process. And so that sometimes we get a sense of a rising of like a klesha, like anger, when it's just in the baby stage, because we slowed down enough, because it happens so fast when you get taken by anger or lust or whatever it is, that it's too late sometimes. It's beyond our ability to handle
Mhm.
really in that moment.
Mhm.
But when you slow down, sitting kind of slows down the process, and sometimes you can see the little teeny tiny little trigger things that is like lighting the match, and
Mhm.
and we can begin to relate to something at an earlier level before it's so overwhelming. Um, that's an I think a benefit of sitting too, just and the notion that each time we can stay with it when something's happening, we can actually stay there.
Mhm.
It it disempowers it a little bit every time.
Mhm.
That okay, so that's part of me. I have this. I'm feeling furious. So what?
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Is like it thrives by being to get our fear of it and running away.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Judy, we have a question in the chat from Nick Shuttler. Hi, Judy. Thank you for your talk. Please, can you talk a little on why the 5 precepts are not discussed or practiced within the Shambhala? Such an
The 5
important.
precepts. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they're only when they're practiced regularly, I think are in the Datans, they tend to be practiced. I don't know. You're Datun people, right? They're practiced during intensive things like the Datun. Um, and I don't know. Um, I mean, they're taught, but they're not practiced that much. They're presented in when people take refuge vow and encouraged to practice as individuals. They're not normally or always practice in group practice settings and things. Depends on the themes of the particular programs, partly too. The focus is on the Hinayana teachings, or sometimes more emphasis on Mahayana uh, teachings and the slogans and things like that. Um, um, I don't think there's anything saying that they shouldn't be practiced. They're just not part of the normal um, uh, culture at this point. Yeah. At seminaries, they're always practiced. They were practiced. People would do uh, the precepts every day. So basically, only in certain kind of like Datun seminaries. I think they do them in the Three Honors program as well, and sometimes in some of the profound treasuries, depending on the theme of the year. Sometimes the themes are in different Mahayana or Vajrayana. So
Okay, thank you, Judy. And maybe we can just take one last question. Gazala, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Thank you so much, Judy. It's such an incredible honor to be in your presence and being taught this class today by you. Thank you very much for being with us. My question is actually a follow-on from Julia's question, and this is about the sort of inner aggression that one might encounter in practice and during a shamatha session. So this is also just kind of relating to the four mindfulnesses, and when Shoghen Rinpoche talks about the mindfulness of mind, there is the mention of the transcendental watcher. So as we talk about that, there's also in the mind, at least in my experience, often, many times, an inner critic that shows up with some very harsh judgments. So I was just wanting to somehow like connect, like this sort of presence, which is supportive, and then this presence, which is quite, quite life negative, or whatever the word is. So I'm just wondering, how do we work with this? Like, what is the workability here one can work with?
I think that inner critic thing is a really perfect image that a lot of us have. And sometimes we have also the inner praiser as well. And that's just as equally off the mark usually. And one thing about shamatha that we're cultivating, or shamatha vipassana, I should say, it's called dispassion. Particularly in Hinayana, the notion of passionlessness is important, and that means not judging, being able to be with situations and without judging. And looking at them is sort of like a aerial view or something, looking at stepping back a second, a little bit, and as though you're just observing and nothing beyond that. And part of that observing is that being curious about that, as opposed to kind of using it to beat yourself up, your own self beating yourself up. So it's kind of shifting a little bit away. Doesn't mean that the judging, that doesn't come up, that inner critic, but there's a sense of then exploring that, not trying to get rid of it, recognizing it. And we all have some of that. And some of it's very heavy because we implant it deeply through our life circumstances and sometimes through our family or whatever. But exploring what is that about? How solid is that? Where is it coming from? The Vipassana, there's a lot of curiosity and a sense of I can look at things and not feel not only the inner critic, but the critic feeling bad about having the inner critic, and it goes on and on and on. How many things can you feel bad about at once? And then having someone says, okay, let me just look. Let me just look. Let me just stay with it. What is feeding it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot in there. Thank you so much for that, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everyone. Before we do the prayers, Tashi, would you like to say anything?
I think we can just thank you, Judy. I hope you feel a lot better very quickly.
Yeah, I hope so too. Maybe next week, hopefully I can gonna arrive in my more healthy state.
Thank you so much for coming anyway. Really appreciate it. Maybe you could flesh up the dedication of merit, Carol?
Yes, I'll do that.
By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara. May all beings be free. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Bye.
I'm gonna.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Judy. Thank you,
Judy.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you,
So much.
Judy.
Thank you.
Really
Hope
great to
you
meet
better.
you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank
Feel better.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
Hope you feel better soon. Thank you.
Yeah, feel better. Ginger tea.